welcome to our panel. Thank you very much for joining me. And to kick off, I thought maybe we could just quickly introduce ourselves and maybe talk a little bit about our association with the startup space. So, Christarose, if you could kick us off.
Yeah, of course. So, hi, it's nice to meet everyone. My name is Krista. I work as a line manager at Tesco. My main customers, I look after pies and savoury snacking, quiches, hot checks. The job title was very, very long, so I'm trying to condense it. But as a bit of a side hustle, I started to develop a passion for how we pull in small brands into Tesco. Because actually there's quite a big gap between supplying a global retailer and starting a new company at home. So over the last few years, I've really been involved in how we cultivate startups, how we accelerate them within the business. And last year, also with my own pop-up shop called Orme, looking at how we bring in small businesses and bring in people from other retailers to see if there's a fit for them within the industry. Yeah, that's it.
Fantastic, thank you very much. Kelly?
That was great. My name's Kelly, and I think I've got the best job in the world, actually. Because I help to lead Co-op's incubator scheme you may have heard of. It's called the Apiary. The Co-op are really passionate about removing barriers for underrepresented founders and purpose-led businesses to access retail listings. So we work with about 8 businesses a year, and we're currently in our 3rd cohort. And we support those businesses by giving practical support, help, advice, and almost acting like an extension of their team. And honestly, I wasn't joking when I said I think it's the best job in the world. It's so rewarding. So you'll hear this afternoon, I guess, about some of the work that we do.
Thank you very much. Nirali?
Hi everyone, I'm Nirali, one of the founders of Superfoodio. So with Superfoodio we make, our whole mission is to make snacking more accessible, healthy snacking through simple natural ingredients. And our current products at the moment, which you might see some propped at the front there, are our peanut butter buttons. So funny enough, we actually soft launched this product 2 years ago here at the IFE show, and came global runner-up for Food World Innovation. And the whole concept is taking peanut butter from the breakfast category and spread into a snackable button that you can have on the go and take it with you.
Hi everyone, my name is Jag. I'm the co-founder, so this Nirali is my wife, and I'm the guy who pushes the pallets around and does all the work while Nirali is the brains and the Superfoodio of our brand. Just really pleased to be here to share our learnings and journey of the last couple of years, and hopefully inspire you guys along in your business's growth as well.
Thank you very much. And yeah, if you would like some Superfoodio treats, help yourself, they're just down there.
If you like peanut butter, make sure you grab a snack. If you want to grab it now, you're welcome to go help
Before they all
yourself.
go. Okay, great. I think a good place to start in this conversation is to address the potential and current roadblocks facing startups, particularly in the food and beverage industry. So I'd like to ask, what do you think some of the biggest challenges are at the moment? Krista, maybe if you could start.
Yeah, sure. This is like my passion area, the barriers of removing them. So similar to Kelly, I looked at the minority founders particularly because they have so many barriers to access to retail. And then over the last year or so, using Tesco's kind of strategic priorities, they've been on black businesses because they make up about 0.01% of parcel card. I can count on 2 hands how many wrapping businesses we've got within the entire kind of Tesco model. And I think a lot of the barriers come down to access, and it's access to networks and penetrating those networks, and how do you find buyers, and how do you know someone who knows the buyer in that place. When brands kind of make their products, they don't really understand how the networks work and how to gain access, but also how a buyer thinks, and most of the time what a buyer does, and then how they can help them accelerate their business. I think it creates a lot of barriers. There's a piece around how do we break that down and actually open up the door a little bit more to let brands in and teach them how they can break through to different buyers and different teams and that kind of thing.
That's a really great point actually. Kelly, can I ask you the same question?
Yeah, I'm building on what Krista said. founders don't have access to producers because their volumes are often very, very small. And the producer won't look at them. So whilst retailers are starting to do more in this space and supporting them with the incubator schemes and the schemes that Tesco and Sainsbury's have got, for example, I'm really passionate about working with those third-party producers actually to come on that journey with us. So I think that's a huge area. And I'm sure these guys will go into give some more examples.
Yeah, absolutely. As a startup yourself, you must have witnessed firsthand some of those challenges. Nirali, are there any in particular that you've had to overcome recently?
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, sort of launching a new product, I mean, it's such a saturated market as well, so you want to make sure that you're adding value, parts of that, everything from producing the product all the way to the end packaging, where it's going to sit. So I think one of the things for us when we developed the product was we were trying to make sure that we have that end in mind, like where is that end product going to sit on the shelf? Who is it going to be next to? What's going to be the price point? And those are some of the challenges that sometimes when you're developing a product, you don't think of. You create this perfect product. It's that balance of kind of looking at that holistic picture of where you will fit in and what's that value that you bring to the customer.
Thank you. And Jag, Kelly touched on this earlier, but scaling of production can be quite a big challenge for startups. Is that something that Superfoodio experienced, or are there any other challenges you'd like to touch on?
Definitely. I mean, like from the start, I think we had it all up against us, not coming from the food and drink world. What we realized is we asked the questions saying, why isn't this possible? Because as Nirali mentioned, we've taken something like peanut butter that's existed since the 1800s as a spread format, right? Like you get your knife out, put it on the toast, and sort of have it as a breakfast occasion. We took that and sort of said, why can't peanut butter be available on the go? So we were asking the challenging questions of why isn't something possible, but how that translates into manufacturing, scaling, recipes, etc. We had to learn as we went, and the key thing I think about facing challenges as a startup is understanding and working together with like-minded people on the journey, because you don't know what you don't know, but there are people out there in the industry. For us, we're part of the Apiary incubator program. There are things we didn't even know when we first got into co-op about what it takes to sort of grow within a sort of a national listing. And that's sort of where we lean on people like Kelly and her team that allows us to kind of gain a bit of knowledge, take our next step and focus on growth. And at the end, it's all about delivering value to customers' life, As long as you can do that well, you're moving in a positive direction.
Sounds a bit half trial by fire and half mentoring and education. Yeah?
It really is, and I think that's one thing we're learning as we grow. Entrepreneurship, we feel from our experience, is more of a mindset rather than anything else. You just got to embrace it. There are so many unknowns. Every day is a roller coaster. I don't want to swear, but it's like being on a roller coaster. You get your highs, you get your lows, and everything in between. But you just got to find that sort of, why am I doing this, and who can help me take that next step. And that's one thing I love about the food and drink industry. Everyone wants to support, and everyone's got a smile on their face, and everyone wants to help each other. Literally, we were on the DLR coming in, and someone sitting opposite us saw some of the samples, and we just struck up a conversation, and we connected on LinkedIn, and again, you never know where that conversation may lead, but that's why you guys, I guess, you're all here to learn and grow together.
Thank you very much. And speaking of learning, with the launch of kind of this mentoring and education program similar to co-ops, Apiary and Tesco's Accelerator, it seems as though there are more opportunities for startups out there to get the help that they need and the support. How do you think these startups are actually helping startups develop? Kelly, if I could come to you first.
So we offer, at the Apiary, we offer some really practical things that we know are really important to founders. So for instance, we pay really quickly. We know that cash flow is really important to founders, so we pay quickly. Things like data. So So if you are a standard co-op supplier, there's a cost associated with accessing data. We waive that cost for our own suppliers, so they're really well informed. We guarantee a listing on shelf, so we give these guys a guaranteed 6-month listing, and we test the proposition, so we know that some of our suppliers can't get the cost prices that they need. We've got an amazing proposition, and I'm not doing anyone any favours if I try to oversell that product to a higher price. So we work with the producer to understand what is the right price for that product, and we invest in that, and then we test stock training, don't we? So that's the grocery code practice. We train these guys to understand what that means for them. We give you negotiation training, we talk to you about margins, we talk to you about cash flow, all those different things we do. But the other thing we do is try to create a network. So we know that businesses that are founded by underrepresented founders often struggle to have that network. They maybe not have seen it in their own network. So we create what we call our hive of innovation. It's an apiary, after all. So we create this hive of innovation where these guys talk to each other, they support each other. And there are some members of our cohort in the audience as well today. And you do, don't you? You do get on the pitch and you support each other. But we also run lunch and learns where we invite really experienced entrepreneurs who've been there, done that, got the battle scars, and they come in and they talk to our cohort as well, and they give you those tips and I guess some reassurance that it's all right sometimes to have a tough day. I don't know if you want to expand on that.
Absolutely. I think one of the best bits is, as she said, we get to learn from people who are like maybe 2-3 steps ahead out in the journey. So just like tomorrow, we've got this incredible session with Vivian Wong, who's the founder of Little Moves. So imagine getting an hour of absolute like 101 on how she built and scaled her business of Mochi ice cream. Or last week we had Miso Tasty, the founder of Miso Tasty, and the challenges of having such a unique product and how it took her X amount of years to hit the shelves and what she's doing in order to get people trying our product. Those are all the questions we have. Every founder has, I guess, in the food and drink world. How do I get my next customer? How do I, once I land on the shelf? That's just step one of what being in retail is about. It gets you to a start line, but it's sort of like, well, then how do you get your products flying off the shelf? That's where, hearing from other peers in the food and drink world helps tremendously. So, I know Nirali and I couldn't praise the Co-op's Apiary program highly enough for how it's changed our lives, to be perfectly fair.
And those schemes are available.
Yes.
And I really like that a lot of the advice you're offering at the Apiary is very practical based. I think a lot of startups want to know the answers to those quite fundamental questions. And while aspirational talk is very powerful, I think you really do need kind of nitty-gritty practical questions answered as well. Krista, what's been your experience with the startup programs, both through Tesco's professionally and your own startup personally?
One thing I think is important to highlight, you mentioned this when we first met, but you haven't said it, is that what you're doing offers a lot of kind of support and leaning in a lot, but none of the work that's happening at Co-op or Tesco is charity. We see it as the right thing to do because these businesses are actually profitable and it's making us better as businesses. So there's a part where we know it's the right thing to do, but at the same time it makes business sense to do this and to have really diverse products and things that customers want. And I think the way you phrased it has really stuck with me that actually, yeah, it's important to highlight that we're doing it because it makes business sense and it's the right thing to do.
No, absolutely. While Co-op is not a shareholder-owned business, we're owned by our members, so that's the point I had. So profit is not our number one motivation. I'm a commercial person, and obviously every decision you make has to be commercially beneficial for our organisation. So we do work really closely with businesses like Superfoodio, Maria in the audience today, to understand what will make them successful. So absolutely not a charity. And touching on your point there, Krista, Co-op's got a store in every postcode in the UK, and it's really important that our products reflect the communities that we operate in. And if we're not supporting diversity, then we're not meeting the needs of our customers. So you're absolutely right. It's a business it's beneficial to our business.
Although we're operating slightly differently in Tesco, we've just gone live with our first accelerator program. That's got 27 brands on it, so we've gone quite heavy on the number of brands, and a bit of the support is different. The thing that's important to highlight is it takes everyone who can doing something. So I'm really pleased with something going on in Co-op. I'm really pleased that Sainsbury's have their Thrive program, and now we offer that place as well for brands who can take that step into Tesco. And we're really trying to attack it from quite a few angles. So yes, we're coming to Tesco, you'll get a listing, you go into the parent category, that's where you'll be on picture with the other products. But we also realise that not everyone feels ready or confident enough to come to Tesco. So it's how do you build that pipeline of brands? Because actually, if I try to list every brand next week that I thought was, from a diverse founder and wanted to give it a go, the reality is a lot of them just aren't there yet.
We get this a lot actually.
Yeah.
So yeah, I might see a really great business and then I might give them a call. But would you be interested in talking to me about potential listing? Or no, absolutely not. You're retail, you're really big and scary, and we're not ready for that. And then we start to talk about the support that we can offer. But I guess it will be really scary for a small producer. I don't know how you guys felt about that.
Yeah, I think it's that jump from startup to scale up, and you kind of think, okay, how am I going to deal with all the different aspects of its distribution or whatever it might be? But I think, like you mentioned earlier, like the masterclasses, even like things like, okay, well, you're going to have a review meeting with your buyer, like what's the most effective conversation you have, what's the data you can bring, how do you actually understand the data system and interpret your data from it? So I think, yeah, kind of, it is scary because you're like, I'm going to that next step, but actually there's so much support around that it sort of allows you to take those steps. And I guess like you're being handheld through those stages, and also not afraid to fail in a way, in the sense that, if there's a SKU that's not working, for example, then it's sort of a conversation of why it's not working, what could be done differently, analysing that as opposed to feeling like, oh no, I'm going to get delisted and that's it. So I think that support is really important.
Fantastic. Do you think it's partly a confidence issue, or are there other factors influencing why people might not feel they're ready to come to someone like Tesco's or Co-op or Sainsbury's? Kelly? Have people mentioned why they might not be ready to engage with you?
I guess supermarkets have a great reputation for nurturing diverse and inclusive businesses. And we're determined that Co-op, and I know you're doing the work as well at Tesco and Sainsbury's are doing great stuff too. But we're trying to change that. So if I was a small business, the first thing I would be concerned about is who am I going to talk to? How am I going to talk to them? What if I email them and they don't respond? Should I email again? Will that really annoy them? How do I actually get my foot in the door? And the advice I would give would be to keep trying, to know when to give up, because there's a really fine line, but to keep trying, and to, if you're in front of the buyer, what I want to know is why this product is really important to you and why it should be really important to me and my customers. So I want to know a little bit about your journey. I want to know what's in all. I want to know your purpose and your mission and how you're going to change the world and what problem needs to be solved. I want to hear all of that. I don't necessarily want a really slick presentation or a PowerPoint. I just want to hear from you to understand about you, about your product and why that's right for my customers. And I think if you're really authentic and you've got a product that you really believe in, like these guys, and you've got to blew us away, then that's something that will make the buyer's ears pick up.
Fantastic, thank you. I think that leads quite nicely into my next question, and that is, what would you like to see from a startup trying to break into this industry, and what do you think stands out? Krista, maybe if you could start there.
To build on what Kelly said, firstly, in the approach, that authenticity piece is really important. Because we work in commercial and we're used to the negotiations and the conversations, sometimes I think brands will hold on to the things that they think we don't want to see. They'll be like, oh, I can't tell them I've got that product that didn't work over there. But actually, what I really love is when a brand goes, I've got this product, I've tried it here, but it didn't really work, so I adapted to this. Also, I probably can't launch in the next 3 months because of this. You know, just that self-awareness about where they are, and that transparency and authenticity about this is exactly what's going on with my business and how can you work together, because it then builds that trust. And I think the key thing about the relationship between founders and retailers is you're still working with people at the end of the day, and I think to really grow and nurture that relationship, it has to begin with trust. There's also, I think, some kind of practical elements that you mentioned about the communication style, making sure you're coming with that point of difference, making sure you're being very kind of clear and concise with your asks, and quite, I think, self-aware of what you think you've got and actually what you think that retailer's looking for, because sometimes it's really easy to find the right fit. Someone's like, I've got that product, this is why I've got it. You're like, actually, yeah, there is a gap in that, and we will go for that.
There will be a bit of luck in that as well.
Oh yeah,
Sometimes the right product at the right time to go.
yeah.
So the kind of maintaining that truth and honesty, even if there is some failure there, just making sure that you keep talking about it.
What I found with some of our founders is that when I understand how it happens, because they're constantly hearing no, there's a bit of hustle going on, and they want to show you all the good bits, like you've just said. And sometimes, right, you need to. I'm going to treat you like you're there, but I'm not going to offer the support. And I think honesty and transparency is really key. And that will make you a bit vulnerable in front of a retailer. I think it's really important because then you build trust.
And Nirali, as a startup yourself, have you seen anything that's really sparked your interest, or what advice might you have for someone trying to break into this particular industry?
Yeah, so I think some of the relationships I've been just listening to this week, and some of the relationships that we've had earlier on it's been a relationship. So we've met guys that I think were a car buyer, when we were pitching the product when it was literally just a prototype. And we were pitching and we were just sharing the story of Superfoodio and what we wanted to do with the product. And it was honest because we weren't sort of there to pitch, but we just happened to meet one of the car buyers at that event. So I think it definitely helps to kind of have that honesty. I think you're right, like it is difficult to kind of be like, oh, I'm not ready. Like that's like a really difficult thing to say as a startup, because you're like, no, I'm always ready. Like, I'm ready to go all the time. But actually, sometimes it's just like, taking a step back, and I think that's where you can stand out, because you're sharing your journey, your ups and downs with everyone that you're working with in this country.
Thank you. And Jack, do you have anything to add on that? Kind of how a startup can stand out from your perspective?
Sure. One thing we've learned is initially we're a husband and wife team, we've got a 5-year-old daughter, and we were wondering, what's the line you draw that, this is Superfoodio and this is family, but one thing we realized and sort of embrace is actually we've got to be true to ourselves. We are a family, we've got to embrace the chaos. There are those school runs to be done and drop-offs and X, Y, and Z, the chaos that comes with kids. It's a fairly mixed audience, so I'm guessing some might have kids and know what we're kind of going through, but we sort of embraced that, sort of said, look, our 5-year-old is part of our journey and she adds tremendous value and brings us so much happiness that we've kind of nicknamed her our mini CEO, right? So if you check us out on our Instagram or socials, we kind of embrace that and talk about our journey as a family, and Superfoodio is just a reflection or an extension of that, because the values we've put into Superfoodio are absolutely what we believe in as people, about eating simple food and, kind of not getting too serious about food. Food's about bringing people together, so you'll probably see if you pick up our bags, it's about making food fun and accessible, focusing on things like health or education about why simple is better. With like the way that tech world's moving, I'm sure you guys would have heard like apps like Zoe, where you kind of wear a patch on your hand, you get to understand the impact of food that's having to you personally. That just shows the amount of data and insight people have about their own health and well-being is at your fingertips now, and that shows that brands and sort of the food industry as a whole is going to be held at a much higher standard from customers because they're very well educated. They're not going to fall for your gimmicks anymore. Some might, but there's going to be a vast majority who won't. And at the end of the day, one thing is, people don't buy product, people buy people. So by sharing your journey, whether it's on social media or on professional platforms like LinkedIn, you get the buy-in of people holistically as founders of a business, and then your brand, and then your products. And that's how they'll champion you. They'll be like, oh, I've got this personal connection or sort of relationship with the brand at a certain level. So next time I'm in the co-op, I saw Superfoodio, let me pick one up because I like what Jag or I like what Nirali said during that talk, so I'll support them by doing that. And I think that's what's important.
I really like that, and I agree. You see this kind of trend for locality or the story behind the brand especially, and I like that you mentioned the kind of blurring of your personal life and your branding. They don't have to be completely separate. Actually, it probably does you a favour if you can have a mixture of both. So speaking of trends and questions a bit more of a kind of forward-looking, but what do you think will be the next big trends in the food and beverage industry, and how might these impact startups specifically? Krista,
I think to build on what Jack said, it's absolutely that piece around the tech. And side kind of discussion, but I was in a conversation with some of our grads a few weeks ago, and they were just talking amongst themselves, and I'm like, oh, just chat GPT it, and I was like, what? And then I started going, chat GPT, write me a birthday card, and I kind of got into it, and I really think certainly the next generation is just, I'm not even that old, the next generation is just thinking that way of actually how do we integrate tech into what we do. So it got me thinking about how do we integrate technology and that knowledge sharing and information into the food industry to just drive that bit, drive the data, and then we can focus on where we add value, which is the innovation, the personal touch, how we communicate with customers and deliver products that people think are great. Side note to that, I also think post-COVID, I've noticed a little bit more collaboration between founders themselves. So, for example, some of the brands that we've got within Tesco going to our accelerator program, they're like, oh, I'm not sending in enough stock to have a full pallet. Another brand sending something in on the accelerator program. They're like, well, let's put our orders together and we can actually split the cost of that and get an efficiency by doing it that way. But similarly, I think between retailers, and I'm hoping with the likes of Kelly, that there's a bit more breaking down those barriers between actually you've got a product that is maybe right for the space, or maybe it's right for Tesco, or actually it might be it's in the market and we're interested in helping grow in total. I think there's a bit around breaking down those barriers between founders themselves and also between the retailers, because we're trying to do the same thing, and I think we'll get there a bit quicker if we do that together.
Yeah, 100%. We've talked about this in the length, but we've got similar objectives. But talking about what the future looks like, that's really exciting for me. I've got 2 little kids, and we often talk about it, that the jobs that they'll do probably aren't even created yet. So it's really difficult to try to predict what the future food trends might look like. But I just know it's really exciting, and we're here to support those founders that will be delivering that. But you're right, founders are so innovative and collaborative, and then want to make change. We find that the founders that we work with aren't just doing things for them and their passion, they're giving back as well. And that's so refreshing, and makes your job so rewarding actually when you're working.
That is refreshing and very exciting environment to be working in as well. Nirali, any kind of forward-looking trends that you've noticed or that you think startups should be noticing?
Yeah, I think similar to the zone and technology, I think that's really advancing really fast. And I think there's already trends that are out there, like the focus on ultra-processed foods and things like that, but it's just looking at how that's integrated with tech. And you're right, like with ChatGPT. When I first heard about it, I was like, how do I include this in my business? Like, this is really different. So I think there is a combination of that focus on food, but also technology and how that's taking things to the next level. Like, because that's accelerating, it's moving really fast. So I think those are sort of trends. And for Superfoodio, it is all about secret natural ingredients. So it's already part of our values and ethos, but it's also how we look at what's going on around us and those things.
And Jagir, you already mentioned Zoe and technology, but any other trends that you'd like to mention here too?
I mean, at the ingredients level, it's kind of, it's always going to be towards the cleaner side of things. One thing I always say is like, when a customer looks at the back of the pack rather than our front of pack, I know that they're going to buy the product because they care about what they're eating. They're looking at the nutritional table or looking at your, ingredient deck and kind of saying, is there anything crazy out there like E numbers or colorings or flavorings which they don't resonate with? I think that's something that there's definitely a wave of people coming, a wave of change coming, that people are going to embrace healthier, simpler foods, no matter what the diet or the type of product it is or what purpose it serves. The cleaner and simpler the better. And just touching on the collaboration thing, and if we're connected on LinkedIn, and please do add me. I bang on about this all the time, but I always say that as challenger brands, it's really important that we work and stand shoulder to shoulder rather than toe to toe. There's so much, it's us little guys, relatively speaking, against the Mars, the Nestle's, the Mondelez of the world, that we can make such a positive difference in the way people eat and consume food. Because say if there's a health-based product like, I don't want to name it, but there's Jagir here from the Gym Kitchen. Gives away. Phenomenal founder, phenomenal brand, phenomenal products. If Jagir's sort of customer base gets, is interested in protein and healthy snacks, and he's doing phenomenal work raising the profile of that, for us, he's doing a lot of the hard work. So it's sort of dovetailing behind that, learning from him, and sort of saying, okay, how can I talk to your audience, and what's worked for you, what hasn't? So that collaboration and exchange of information, it really is key as small brands to be able to grow and thrive together. I think
that doesn't just have to be through small brands to small brands though, and the brands that you mentioned, I guess they're not the enemy. I won't suggest you won't say that. But we've done a lot of work at Co-op where we're taking the knowledge, some of the funding actually of those big suppliers, and channeling that into some of our smaller suppliers. So these guys don't necessarily have access to meeting rooms or test kitchens or whatever that might look like. And some of our bigger suppliers are partnering with us actually to fill that gap. So yeah, collaboration, not just between founders, but between bigger businesses and our founders, I think is really exciting.
It is, really is. Collaboration is the key.
I actually think it's part of what the programs bring. It's almost like a safe space for founders to meet other founders, because from speaking to a lot of founders last year, I realised the journey can be quite lonely and it can be quite isolating. And I'm glad that there are pockets of programs and spaces where people can actually meet other people that are on a similar journey to them, because they know they've got that group and they're all going through that together and they can share the learning and connection.
Yeah, it's great to know that there's so much support out there for smaller businesses. Yeah, that's brilliant. We're about 10 minutes before the session's over, and I thought, because one of the overarching themes, I think, to our chat today and when we were chatting yesterday, is that you want to be giving practical advice that people can use. So I thought to finish, we could have a bit of a chat about that and maybe give some advice in that area and look at things like, how startups can break into retail and the kind of how, what, why, when, where, and get those kind of nitty-gritty questions answered. So perhaps Superfoodio, as a startup kind of at the coal face, what kind of advice can you give to other startups? Jag, if you could start.
I guess one thing at the end of the day is your product. You know, it has to be right for retail, because not every brand or founder or business is ready or wants to scale to a retail. Some people are happy at farmers markets, you know, maybe it's their sort of, you know, if you've got a 9 to 5, it's your 5 to 9, etc. So I think Nirali touched on this previously. What we always share with other founders is like, understand your end goal and vision, and then kind of work your way from the outside in to build your brand, your product, your proposition. And if you do that, you will understand what your product looks like when it ends up on a shelf at Tesco or Co-op. There are other retailers available, that's really mentioned. But that's sort of the real advice is, like, look at where you want to be. For us, our vision and mission is to make healthy snacking accessible to the masses, not just to people who can afford it. So, you know, thinking about price was really important, thinking about portion control as we think, talking about health, because, you know, even too much of a healthy thing can be indulgent, right? Like, so you've got to be careful about all those things. So thinking about the 360, about your brand, your product, your values, your proposition, let alone the, you know, checking the taste box, which is absolutely important in food and drink, is the right way to kind of realize its true potential. So we knew that we wanted to be in retail, so we started with that in mind. So I said, okay, we've come up with this really clever, innovative idea. How do we now deliver to that promise of making health accessible? And then we chipped away at that, understanding price points. You know, we went to, like, if you look at my phone, it's full of the most random photos of, you know, shelves in supermarkets and bays and different price points and what kind of products work and how people interact and engage and pick up products in a supermarket. Looking at someone else's trolley going, I wonder why they bought that, you know? All those kind of little things, you really have to obsess over that if you want to kind of grow and thrive within food and drink, I think. But hey, if there's ever an industry to be involved in, it's food and drink, right? But we all need to eat and drink at some stage, and it's about human behavior. And as long as you're adding value as a business, I think you will find a customer.
I don't think it's going anywhere soon, luckily, so that's good news for us. And Nirali, what practical advice do you have, having had the experience and gone through the motions? What would you say to potential startups out there?
Yes, I think one of the things, especially after the pandemic, which I think there's an element of being a lot behind the screen. You know, all meetings can happen online. You know, sending emails and all the rest. But I think, to be honest, like being at events like this, where you can maybe have the opportunity to say hello to somebody in person or start establishing that relationship, because I think, you know, I found myself caught up in like, oh, I've just got, like, you know, there's massive to do this, need to do this, because I can't make that event, or, you know, then I have to go across London to be there. But actually, the value of that, I think, is just so important. And also, like, connecting with, whenever we're at a show like this, like, the people around us on the stands and things like that, that connection, it doesn't matter if you made those sales or whatever it is, but those become your, always, like, your family friends for life, because you're always reaching out to them. So I'd probably say that sometimes it's been lost a bit after the pandemic, because it is easy to do Zoom calls and trust, but actually just to get out there and meet people, you know, not to sort of underestimate that face-to-face connection.
So events, networking and face-to-face meetings have been really beneficial.
Yeah.
Kelly, same question, practical advice for startups?
I guess one of the challenges that founders face once they've got their product and they've got everything that Jagir described is getting in contact with a buyer. And I know that's notoriously difficult, so apologies on behalf of all buyers. However, if you think, I'll give you an example. I was on the phone actually to Marie the other day, and we were talking away, and Marie said, we must get loads of emails from founders. And I said, literally, Marie, since we've been on the phone, we've had 2 come through, and it was constant. And while I try to respond to them all, they don't always catch my eye. So my advice would be, go to pitch days. So things like, I'm not here to represent Bread and Jam, but Bread and Jam is a really great example of somewhere you can go to meet buyers face to face. So it might just be a 5-minute pitch, or it might just be a quick introduction, but you've met that person and something will spark them, when you land your email. It might be that you send a really creative sample pack that literally lands on the right day, but it tells all about your product and does that in maybe a creative way. One of the things that's live at the moment actually is we're recruiting for Apiary 3 is we've got a business, I encourage you to look at her, her name is Clara Best, and she creates products that are made with cricket protein. And Clara's actually she's done a whole series, I'm not sure you've seen it, Krista, she's done a whole series of why co-ops should list her. And honestly, that's something I can't say no to. She's put so much effort in, she's aligned with our vision and values, and I want to meet her. So these are things that will get you in front of a buyer. Now once you're in front of a buyer, really make sure your pitch is relevant. And like I said before, speak from the heart. I don't necessarily want to see 20 slides telling me all about your product and very glossy. I want to know about you, I want to know about your product, and I want to know why that's right for co-op. Now we're a convenience retailer, and a lot of our suppliers that come and see, we forget that, they'll just do a generic presentation. So the presentation that you do for Crystal will be very different to the one you do for me, because we have very different customers. So really refine it and make sure it's really relevant to that buyer. One of the most important things though is don't overpromise. So if you tell me you have an accreditation, if you tell me you have a producer or you have a design and you've got everything set up, make sure that's true, because the cracks will begin to show as soon as we start having those conversations. If you're a little bit behind on your journey, be honest, and like I said before, we can support you with that. One of the most important things, and my colleague Ellie will thank me for saying this, is, and it's something that I don't know if you experience, but fill your forms in. So if we ask you if you want to set a product up, we can't do that without you doing the practical stuff. The filling in the forms, the logging onto the portals, all of that stuff is equally as important as creating this amazing product. So you need to do it all. You need to be an admin person, you need to be a salesperson, you need to be an amazing creative, but all those things really matter. So I would suggest, my final thought I guess is, put yourself in the position of the person you're trying to sell to and understand what their needs are and really try to meet them in that pitch or that intro, or once you get your green light, do what we ask you to do, because that's really, really important. But that's my final message, I guess. Fill your forms in.
Fantastic advice. Thank you. And Krista, addressing this from, again, both a professional and a personal point of view, what advice would you have for fledgling forms?
Again, this point, our emails get so full, but the last thing on my list is to chase you for it, and then the deadline comes, and I mean, so please, if you're making notes, I see loads of you are, well done. Please, really important. I have so much to say, I'll be very, very concise.
Okay.
Please find me afterwards, because this might be the only thing I'm good at in the entire universe, kind of the passion for supporting small brands and startups. I think there is a piece around actually those brands putting themselves in our shoes and what we want to see. I think there's a lot of advice we can offer startups, but the first thing to say is that from a retailer perspective or if you're a manufacturer, actually put yourself in their shoes. I think we give a lot of advice to startups, but really I found that to work with small brands, I've had to think differently and to work differently, and actually how I work with some of our bigger brands isn't how I can show up to some of these conversations. So I think there's a little bit around, if you're in that seat and you can actually work with a brand and change their business and support them, then think about how you might bridge that equity gap and think differently and have a bit more patience, or try and listen through if they're really nervous in their pitch because it's the biggest thing they've done all year, although we are very, very busy. I think there's a little bit about, actually, if you can make those decisions, have a bit more of that empathy, because it's not always, I think, on the founder. In terms of practical things, I'm going to plug a couple, because we actually outsource a lot in Tesco. We go, well, I'm not an expert in that, so will do that. I've been having a few conversations with a lady called Carly Ismail who works for Lloyds Bank, and actually I learned so much from her, and I'm going to share this knowledge in terms of this tip, is look at your finances before you want to go to a retailer. And actually, one thing that she was saying is that if you're a business and haven't been trading for that long, your personal finance will matter when you go into those conversations. So if you go to Lloyd's and say, you know, I really want like a startup loan to do X, Y, Z, and they go, oh, you haven't traded for that long. Oh, but then you've got like, I don't know, 3 parking tickets you didn't pay in 2017. That might affect you. I didn't know things like that can affect startups. So I'd say at least look out for things like Lloyds Bank and Barclays, who are very plugged into supporting startups, and start thinking about that journey maybe before you approach the retailer, because actually it's something that you can do to unlock some of those barriers. I think there's a second point around lean on the bigger brands, and I think took learnings from what they do well. So where we're mediating quite a few things is we're working with the Black Entrepreneurs Conference to run some masterclasses with some Tesco directors, and actually we've been able to get Heinz to support and do a masterclass on branding and how you actually go about building a brand, and also a style of marketing as well. Because they'll be able to tell you, oh, maybe it's worth you spending 10k on that banner on the website because the return is so on that versus putting some strips on shelving is huge. And when you're a brand with very limited resources and funds, actually seeing what's worked well for the bigger brands, I think can help kind of unlock quite a bit for you. And I also think there's a bit around, that honesty and being prepared in kind of how you go into those conversations and how you get yourself ready and gather your information as well. Just think about what you want to land in that session and what you want them to take away, and be quite concise in what you're delivering. But I think the likes of like Kelly and myself will always be an open door for brands that have questions or just want to know more, or actually they think they're ready and they want to put something in front of you. It's about bridging that gap to access, I think.
Fantastic. I think we could talk about this for 4 or 5 more days, to be honest, but I think we're going to have to wrap it up there. I know some of the panel are going to stick around. If you do have any questions for them, please feel free to come and ask, and help yourself to some snacks down there. But yeah, thank you very much for coming and listening. Thank you so much for the wonderful, really exciting, passionate chat. Thank you so much.